Hello, everybody. On behalf of the Women in Leadership Alberta chapter, welcome to our podcast called Lead Beyond Today, where we support women with tips, tools, and insights to empower them to greater potential in their leadership journey. I'm Shannon Mayer, the founder of Creative Impact Consulting. I'm an executive and leadership coach and a human resources and leadership development consultant, and also a proud committee member of the Women in Leadership Alberta and co-chair of the Calgary chapter.
Hi, everybody. I'm Heather Thompson, the founder of Heather Thompson Consulting Services and co-owner of LumaLead Inc. I'm an executive and leadership coach as well as a systemic team coach, and I've held various leadership roles throughout my career. And so one of my favorite things to do is talk about leadership and women and, what's going on in today's world. And so today we're going to be talking about a topic that many career women will resonate with, which is navigating and integrating work and life as being working parents, particularly the situation when you're returning to work after maternity leave. It's a time when many women can feel they need to get their footing and their confidence when shifting gears from living their personal lives to going back as a corporate professional.
And to explore this today, we are so excited to introduce Madeleine Natale. Madeleine is a certified executive coach and facilitator based in Calgary, Alberta. She specializes in leadership and career strategy for working parents, working with ambitious professionals who are navigating growth, transition, and that complex tension between professional achievement and personal life. Her work helps clients lead with greater clarity, intention, and sustainability during pivotal seasons of change. Alongside her coaching practice, Madeleine works in higher education, designing and delivering career development and leadership programs within the University of Calgary's Faculty of Law. There, she supports emerging legal professionals in building strategic networks and creating opportunities beyond the traditional job postings. As a mom of 2 young children, Madeleine leads and supports small group leadership coaching cohorts for working parents throughout the year. In these programs, she creates thoughtful, candid spaces that blend strategic tools with real conversations about ambition, identity, and capacity, helping working parents redefine leadership in a way that reflects and honors both their professional goals and their family realities.
So, Madeline, for me, returning to work was really challenging. I had my husband working out of town. Actually, he was working in Montreal at the time, and I had really very little family support. And so I think that experience gave me a firsthand understanding of the pressures that working parents can face. And I'm excited to explore how you're going to talk through and help parents navigate those challenges with strategy and compassion. So, to jump right in, what do most organizations and women misunderstand about returning to work after maternity leave?
Well, thank you so much, Heather and Shannon, for that introduction. And to jump right in, I'd say returning to work after maternity leave, it's usually treated as a logistical transition when it's actually a huge identity transition.
Mm.
People can end up focusing on hours and daycare pickups and who's gonna put the chicken in the oven and sick days, who's got what meeting when, and becoming a parent shifts how you think about time and ambition and what meaningful work looks like to you in this season of life. So a question that organizations and women often skip over is, who is this person who's coming back? So the real work of returning, it just isn't your schedule. Of course, the schedule is important, but it's reflecting on how parenthood has changed who you are and how you want to show up professionally.
Yeah, I love how you say that and who you are coming back because we don't think like that. I think we just jump back in as who we were, right? And things have changed for us. So, taking that time to pause to think about who am I now, right? And what does that look like within the, organization and family and all of those things that come together. Yeah, I love that.
I'm chuckling on the who puts the chicken in the oven. It's just, but it is all of that. And, there's so much to think about for sure. So, in talking about just more about the shifts, what actually changes for women in this season beyond those obvious logistical shifts?
So, yeah, I really think that becoming a parent, it truly reshapes your identity and it
Mhm.
changes how you relate to work. So, I can use myself as an example, and Heather, I loved your example at the start too of some of your challenges. During my last and final maternity leave, I became gripped with this notion of, oh my goodness, I'm going to be spending 45 plus hours away from my children during the week. And this was significant and I knew I wanted this, but I also knew that I wanted my work to have a deeper meaning. And that actually led me to pursuing my coaching training. So I did my coaching training in the latter part of my last maternity leave. And I ended up upskilling during my maternity leave so that I could shift the depth and the kind of work that I was doing. So for many parents, the question becomes, given who I am now, what kind of work makes sense for me in this season of my life?
Yeah, I love that. And I think about, it is different seasons, right? As we go through different things within our life, like we are moving through these seasons of life. And so when you think about women in leadership and even ambition, how can working moms think about this a little bit differently, after they become parents? Because I think that is an issue that women often struggle with.
Absolutely. And I'd love to offer a reframe, which is motherhood doesn't reduce leadership capacity, it has the potential to sharpen it. So, I mean, as the old adage goes, there's no one as effective as a working mom, right? And and managing a career while raising young children, oh my goodness, it is not for the faint of heart. It forces you to prioritize, it forces you to set and adhere to boundaries that maybe you had trouble adhering to before when your container had more fluidity. But when you are a working parent, those the day has certain limits to it. There's certain realities that surface, and it forces you to focus on what truly matters. So in my own work, what again, to use myself as an example, I moved away from what was a very high volume, fast paced transactional style of work towards a more deeper relational type of work where the conversations and the coaching that I was having was had the potential for a greater impact within the same container of hours. So leadership and parenthood often become less about hours worked and more about clarity and strategy and meaningful impact. And I will nuance this by saying there are certain careers where you may be working with a billable hour structure where this becomes truly difficult to manage.
Mhm.
But I think that's where employers and organizations can be having conversations with the women in the room to see, okay, we know this person has these hours in the day. How can we make the most use of that?
That's an interesting thought around that, but even just through just listening to you, it's when you think about who am I now and what is the right career or the right work for me, when you haven't come back yet, it's probably hard to make that connection. You think you're coming back to the job you left, and that's because what you know, but it's just making that connection and it's and but I think there is that leadership element that will come out. This is a forcing function that really makes you prioritize and makes you set those boundaries a whole lot easier, better than you did before. But yeah, it's such a interesting thought here. Is just yeah, how do we want to come back, and what do we need? Who do we need to be? What's going to make our life, you know, complementary to this new world now in our work?
And it's not an easy question to answer. It really isn't.
Oh,
It requires deep
no.
reflection and the
Yeah.
space and the time and the support. But that's why so many women end up making changes and pivots either during or right after a leave is, I mean, there's a lot of time when you're sitting by yourself at 2 a.m. holding a baby and these thoughts are
Yeah.
swirling.
Yeah.
And so it's to take it out of that like swirling and into, okay, true reflection, which turns into
Mhm.
action, which turns into change.
So, what would you say are some common mistakes that women make when they're reintegrating into the workplace? And how can they approach this transition more strategically?
Yeah, so I think the biggest mistake that I see people making is focusing again on that surface level logistic piece, which is overwhelming in and of itself. Uh, and one piece that people gloss over is invisible labor and the mental load. So again, many parents plan that surface level like daycare pickups and meals, but they don't renegotiate with their partner or support system things like medical appointments. Like, who is going to remember that we need to book that immunization appointment 6 months from now? Like, who is keeping that in their head to do? Or the clothing management, like, who's going to remember that next year I'm going to need splash pants in this size, so I need to pass these along to my friend. Or the household coordination, even if you outsource, which is a strategy that a lot of corporate professionals take, who is managing this outsourcing? Who is like, people don't just appear out of nowhere to help you clean your house or take care of children. Like, there's management around that. So, that planning work, it can often live inside one person's head. And I'll just say it, that person is often the mother. So when you're the one who is at home during often that first year of life, you can end up defaulting into that labor when it really should be redistributed when both partners are back and engaged in the paid workforce. So that sustainable return to work, it's not just the logistical planning, it's redistributing the mental load within the support system that you have.
I find that so interesting because I think that as women, like there's this pressure, like we're going to do it all, like all the stuff at home, I think. And so I think that opportunity to shift the mindset around, when we both return back to paid work, what will that look like for both of us? Not just for me, but what will it look
Mhm.
like for both of us? And I think a lot of times, and maybe you see this in your practice, I'm not sure. Maybe women are more hesitant to ask for what they need as they're going back. So, that's what's kind of resonating with me. Is that something that you see? I see you smiling, so I'm just curious, what your thoughts are because there's a lot of pressure sometimes for women. Yeah.
Totally. And there's two pieces. It's the hesitating to ask for help or even thinking that that is something to ask for help.
Yeah.
The other piece is letting go of control.
Yes.
And that's the
Mhm.
other part of
Mhm.
Yeah.
redistributing labor is like if you, so again, a personal example in our household, I do not take care of any of the medical appointments. And that
Yeah.
was uncomfortable to let go of at first and to trust my partner that he was going to handle that. And so that's an aspect of the practice that can be uncomfortable for some women, especially if it's quote unquote just easier to just do it yourself. But you're doing yourself a disservice by not attempting to
Mhm.
do that redistribution at least a little bit.
Yeah. I know in my house, my husband does the cooking, so I easily like let that go. So I was like, okay.
Yeah.
For the sake
Uh,
of my family too, because I'm not a great cook. So, but I mean, yeah, it's about how do we lean into our partner and really,
mhm.
and ask for what we need and not feel uncomfortable. But it was at first for me to do that. It took a lot for me to ask for what I needed. And then now I can do that. But it's, there's a lot of mindset or kind of that self-talk for myself to really move myself into asking really for what I need. Yeah, what I needed. Yeah.
Yeah, I can see where, it's a team conversation, and just with working with clients, naturally they, sometimes have to, shift our sessions or work gets in the way because illness is unpredictable, just there's so, childcare can go, sideways. There's just all kinds of things that really come in and I suppose there's a mindset shift to being more adaptable. I'm curious on that, on the adaptability and resilience piece. Where do you find those conversations go with your clients?
Oh man, I mean, that's such a skill and a strength that I think, again, it's these secret leadership superpowers that parents are cultivating, right? It's that just it makes you rethink what was once urgent, and now you have this broader perspective, and it's so helpful. And yeah, it's definitely something that that people can leverage when they're going back to work and to be more well, if I can put it that way, knowing that, things are maybe a little bit more fluid, and that's okay.
Yeah.
So what's the reason that you focus like specifically on working parents in your coaching practice? And what happens when they have the structured space to think about their careers, really rather than like to be more proactive than just being reactive to them? Yeah.
Yeah, great question. So career decisions rarely exist in a vacuum. We are whole people. We are who we are at work. We are the same person as who we are at home. There's no severance in existence yet that I'm aware of. So in in coaching conversations, what I was finding is I was doing more one-on-one coaching with people about all sorts of different topics regarding leadership and promotions and job transitions or searches. Questions started to come up around timing and children and family responsibilities and family planning, fertility question marks.
Yeah.
And this almost always, even though we were having a coaching conversation about leadership, people's lives filter in. And I started to think to myself, oh man, I wish coaching partner A had been in the room last week when I was talking to coaching partner B. And wouldn't it be great if actually coaching partner C was here too? And that's when the idea formed. So I have now created structures both in my private practice and also in my internal role as coach for having structured spaces for parents, for caregivers to reflect on these conversations together in community, as you said, to help move them from reacting to their careers to making intentional choices and frankly feeling less alone about these questions that a lot of people are having.
Yeah. And I like that sense of community because oftentimes we can feel like we're the only one that's like experiencing that, or there's a little bit of shame sometimes. So, when you're pulling people together, like you said, it really shows them, hey, you know what? Where other people are feeling exactly how we're feeling, and it's a normal feeling.
And I can see in that strength of community, you're talking with like-minded people who are going through the same thing and probably not necessarily an outlet to take that anywhere else. These are kind of more personal questions. How do I bridge that with family or friends, or because they're not maybe living in that world? Sometimes it's hard, you know?
Totally. And that's the difference between a coaching conversation, as you both well know, and chatting with your friend over a drink. It's the
Mm-hmm.
space is really intentionally structured, and everybody kind of knows the rules of engagement going in, knowing that we're not offering advice to each other. We're offering space for reflection. And what comes out of even just naming that shift in the room is it's nothing short of magic. It's
Yeah.
pretty cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that is. So this is so insightful, Madeline. I mean, we've really talked a little bit or heard a little bit about just more than just logistics, getting dressed up in the morning, you're going back to work, but just how to think about it, how to be more structured, how to be more in control or in taking ownership and some of the things to think about as you make this transition back. So is there so much that one can think about? So if we think about the flip side of that, there's organizations and leaders who are receiving the individuals when they are returning to work. What can leaders and organizations do to create a more supportive and seamless return to work experience?
Yeah, so oftentimes organizations treat a person's return to work as, business as usual. This person's coming back, and it's a huge transition. It's a major transition. And frankly, I've been speaking to a lot of organizational leaders throughout putting together my group coaching programs, and I'm just not seeing a huge amount of intention behind this. And there's some really concrete aspects that leaders can offer their parents as they return to work. And I'll give one example, which is something as simple as offering a gradual return to work to ease the shift from full-time caregiving back to professional life so that people can reintegrate more thoughtfully. It can be a game changer. And a gradual return in many HR circles is often considered the norm for coming back from a medical leave, but it's not for a parental leave for whatever reason. And I was able to negotiate that for myself coming back from my second leave, and it was frankly a game changer. And so organizationally, offering something like that or having a conversation around what could be helpful, it's low cost. And when organizations intentionally design this transition to be supportive, it helps support the employees better and it retains talented professionals who might otherwise leave.
Yeah, they're feeling more supported. Yeah, the gradual is an interesting concept because if you think about a lot of moms now in Canada, maternity leave is what, 15, 16 months now at maximum or something?
18.
18.
18.
So
Yeah.
can you imagine like how life is completely shifted when you're coming back after 18 months? And, for organizations, it's, not a new employee starting, but there's a lot of newness there. Things have changed. It's a whole, as we know, you take 2 months off and it's a lot of change. So, but 18 months, that's a lot. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So, Madeline, for someone that's listening right now, whether they're returning to work or supporting somebody that is returning to work, what's one action or reflection that they can take tomorrow?
Yeah. So I'll speak to somebody who may be in the midst of returning to work themselves. And I'd say that a powerful first concrete step that someone can take is to first identify and then work towards redistributing that mental load.
Mm.
So writing down everything that is in your mind, that ticker tape that's going through your mind at all times as a mom, the appointments, the planning, the clothing, the magic making, the meals, all of these pieces that they're cognitively quite heavy to be managing. And sit down with your partner or your support system and redistribute. Let go of something, even offloading a small percentage of that mental load, 5 to 10%, can create the space that you need for a more successful return to work that is actually sustainable.
Yeah. And what I like that redistribution of work, it's really around, it's better for everybody involved. Like for
Totally.
you, your supporting partner, for the baby, right? It's, taking that time to so that we're not, feeling stressed and overwhelmed from all the things that are happening. So, yeah. Well, Madeline, I want to thank you today for being our guest, and we really enjoyed you coming on and talking about this, I think, such an important topic and helping, women think about some of the things that they need to when they return from maternity leaves. And I want to thank everybody for tuning in to Lead Beyond Today, Will Alberta. It's about empowering women in leadership across Alberta and beyond. We hope today's episode has inspired you to lead with confidence and purpose. So don't miss out on our next empowering conversation. And remember, your voice matters, your vision is powerful, and your leadership shapes the future. Together, let's continue to break barriers and pave the way for a brighter tomorrow. Stay connected with us on social media, Will Calgary, Will Edmonton on LinkedIn for updates and exclusive content. And you can find our content on Will National YouTube and on our website. Until next time, keep leading fearlessly. Goodbye for now.